Keanu Reeves walked into an upscale luxury salon, just looking for a simple haircut. He wasn't dressed in fancy clothes, didn't wear expensive jewelry, and didn't have an arrogant attitude. To the staff, he looked like just another ordinary man who didn't belong in such an expensive place. They whispered, laughed, and treated him like he wasn't worth their time. But when the truth about who he was came out, the entire salon was left in complete shock. Hey there, before we dive back into the story, let us know where you're watching from. If you love stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We've got another amazing story coming your way tomorrow. Keanu Reeves had always been a simple man. Despite his fame and wealth, he never acted superior to anyone. He lived humbly, dressed casually, and preferred kindness over arrogance. That morning, as he walked through the busy streets of Los Angeles, he realized he needed a haircut. He usually didn't care much about appearances, but he had a big event coming up, and his hair had grown a little too long. As he strolled past a luxury salon, he glanced at the large glass windows. Inside, perfectly styled men and women sipped on expensive coffees while getting their hair done by professionals. Keanu hesitated for a moment. It wasn't his usual kind of place, but it was nearby, and he figured they could just give him a quick trim. So, he pushed open the glass door and stepped inside. The moment he entered, the atmosphere changed. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, glanced up from her phone. She gave Keanu a quick look, his simple jeans, his slightly worn leather jacket, and his unshaven face, and her lips curled into a smirk. "Can I help you?" she asked in a tone that made it clear she thought he was in the wrong place. Keanu, always polite, smiled. "Yeah, I was hoping to get a haircut." The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" Keanu shook his head. "No, I was just passing by and thought I'd walk in." She sighed dramatically, as if he had just asked for something outrageous. "This is an exclusive salon. We don't usually take walk-ins. And, our prices are quite high." She looked him up and down as if he couldn't afford it. Keanu nodded, unbothered. "That's fine. I don't mind waiting." She rolled her eyes and turned toward the stylists in the back. "Hey, does anyone want to take a walk-in?" she called, but her voice carried a mocking tone. A few stylists looked over, whispering to each other. Some giggled. A tall man with a sleek haircut and designer glasses scoffed. "A walk-in? Here? Seriously?" Another stylist, a woman with a sharp bob and an expensive-looking black dress, smirked. "Oh, honey, I think Supercuts is down the street." The group laughed. Keanu heard everything but said nothing. He was used to being underestimated. He had spent years of his life being judged, ignored, and looked down upon before he became famous. But he had never let it change him. The receptionist sighed and leaned forward. "Look, we have clients who book weeks in advance. Maybe try a more affordable place." Keanu tilted his head slightly, still smiling. "I don't mind paying. I just need a simple cut." The receptionist scoffed. "A simple cut? At this salon? Do you even know where you are?" At this point, the other customers were watching too. Some were curious, others amused. Keanu could feel their eyes on him, but he remained calm. Then, the manager walked over. She was an older woman, dressed in an expensive white suit, her short platinum hair perfectly styled. She glanced at Keanu and then at the receptionist. "What's the problem?" The receptionist smirked. "This man walked in asking for a haircut, but he clearly doesn't belong here." The manager sighed and looked at Keanu. "Sir, we are a high-end establishment. Our services start at $500. We only take exclusive clients." Keanu smiled, completely unfazed. "That's all right. I can pay." The room went silent for a second. The stylists exchanged glances. The manager frowned slightly, looking him over. "And who exactly are you?" Before Keanu could answer, another voice spoke up. A woman sitting in one of the salon chairs gasped, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, that's Keanu Reeves." Instantly, the mood in the room shifted. The whispers turned into stunned silence. The stylists who had been laughing just moments ago looked like they had seen a ghost. The receptionist's smug expression disappeared in an instant, the manager's eyes widened in horror. "Mr. Reeves. I'm so sorry, I didn't recognize you." Keanu chuckled softly. "No worries." The stylists, who had mocked him, suddenly looked desperate. "I can do your hair," one of them blurted out. "It would be an honor." Another rushed forward. "Please, sit down. We'll give you the best haircut of your life." The receptionist, now pale, stammered, I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to." Keanu waved his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "It's okay," he said calmly. "I think I'll find another place." The entire salon was frozen as Keanu turned toward the door. The stylists, the manager, the receptionist, everyone stood there in stunned silence, realizing they had just turned away one of the most beloved and humble celebrities in the world. As he stepped outside, the cool breeze hit his face. He took a deep breath and smiled. He had never needed fancy salons or expensive treatment. He was just a regular guy who happened to be famous. And at that moment, he was reminded once again, kindness and humility mattered far more than status or wealth. A few blocks down, he found a small, family-run barbershop. The barber, an older man with a warm smile, greeted him like an old friend. "Need a trim?" Keanu nodded. "Yeah, just something simple." As he sat in the chair, he thought about what had happened. The people in the luxury salon had been so quick to judge, so quick to assume who he was based on how he looked. They had valued status over humanity, but in the end, it didn't matter. Because kindness always won. And as the barber snipped away at his hair, Keanu smiled. He had found exactly what he was looking for, not just a haircut, but a reminder of what truly mattered in life. The old barber worked carefully, his hands steady, treating Keanu like any other customer. No special treatment, no fake smiles, just pure professionalism. The atmosphere was warm, the soft hum of clippers filling the small shop. There were no overpriced products, no pretentious stylists whispering in the background, just honesty, skill, and respect. As Keanu relaxed in the chair, an elderly woman entered the shop. She was frail, carrying a small bag of groceries, and her hands trembled slightly as she held onto the doorframe for support. The barber turned to her with a kind smile. "Mrs. Patterson, you all right?" She nodded, returning his smile. "I was just passing by. Thought I'd check if my grandson left his cap here." The barber reached over to a shelf, grabbed a small blue cap, and handed it to her. "He sure did. That boy's always leaving something behind." She chuckled, her eyes warm with gratitude. "Thank you, Joe. I don't know what I'd do without you." Keanu watched the exchange, his heart warming. This was the kind of place he loved, where people knew each other, where kindness wasn't reserved for the wealthy, and where no one was judged based on how they looked. As the haircut continued, Keanu decided to strike up a conversation. "You've been running this place for a while, haven't you?" Joe nodded, combing through Keanu's hair as he worked. 40 years, give or take. Started this shop when I was fresh out of barber school. My wife used to help run it before she passed." Keanu could hear the emotion in the man's voice. "I'm sure she'd be proud of what you've built here." Joe smiled softly, his eyes reflecting years of memories. "I like to think so. These days, it's not about making a fortune. It's about community, about being there for people. Not like those big, fancy places that only care about money. Keanu chuckled. Yeah, I just came from one of those. Joe raised an eyebrow. That so? Keanu smirked. They didn't think I could afford a haircut. Joe let out a hearty laugh. Well, they clearly don't know good folks when they see them. A few minutes later, Joe dusted off Keanu's shoulders and spun the chair around. There you go, all set. Keanu looked at himself in the mirror. It was exactly what he wanted, simple, clean, nothing extravagant. He pulled out his wallet and handed Joe a few bills. Joe took one look and shook his head. Son, this is way too much. Keanu smiled. Consider it a tip. For being a decent human being. Joe hesitated, then nodded gratefully. Thank you, Keanu. And, I don't say this often, but it's an honor to have you here. Keanu stood up, shaking Joe's hand firmly. The honor's mine. As he stepped outside, he glanced back at the small barbershop. It wasn't a luxury salon, it didn't have gold-plated mirrors or overpriced treatments, but it had something far more valuable, heart. And that was worth more than anything money could buy. Meanwhile, back at the luxury salon, the staff were still in disbelief. The receptionist stared at the door where Keanu had walked out, her face pale. Did we really just turn away Keanu Reeves? One of the stylists whispered, the manager groaned, rubbing her temples. This is bad. Really bad. The receptionist gulped. Do you think he'll say something? What if this ruins our reputation? The realization of their mistake hit them hard. They had judged a man not by his character, but by his clothes. And now, they had lost not just a customer, but a lesson they should have learned long ago. Keanu, however, didn't waste another thought on them. He had found kindness in the most unexpected place, and that was all that mattered. As Keanu walked down the quiet street, the sun beginning to set, he couldn't help but smile. Life had a funny way of teaching lessons, sometimes in the most unexpected places. He had entered that luxury salon expecting nothing more than a simple haircut, but what he got was a reminder of how people often judged others by appearance alone. He could have made a scene, could have embarrassed the rude receptionist and arrogant manager, but that wasn't who he was. He didn't believe in revenge, didn't care for proving people wrong with words. He believed in actions. And tonight, he had found exactly what he was looking for, not in a lavish, overpriced salon, but in a small, old barbershop filled with warmth, humility, and kindness. Just as he reached his parked motorcycle, he heard someone calling out behind him. Excuse me. Sir, please, wait. He turned to see a young woman rushing toward him. She was one of the newer stylists from the luxury salon, the one who had hesitated when the receptionist dismissed him. She looked flustered, breathless. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what happened back there, she said, her voice filled with sincerity. I should have spoken up. I saw how they treated you, and it wasn't right. Keanu tilted his head slightly, studying her face. It's okay, he said with a small smile. It wasn't your fault. She shook her head. No, but it's not just about you. They do that to a lot of people. I've seen them turn away customers who don't look the part, and it's been bothering me for a while. But I've been too afraid to say anything. Keanu's smile didn't fade. It's hard to stand up against the people who pay you. She nodded, looking down. Yeah. But seeing how you handled it, it made me realize that I don't want to work in a place like that anymore. Keanu took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small card. He handed it to her. She looked down, confused. What's this? He grinned. A contact for a friend of mine. He owns a small but very good salon, not about money or status, just skill and passion. I think you'd fit in better there." Her eyes widened in shock. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." She looked at him with gratitude, tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." Keanu shrugged, fastening his helmet. "Just promise me you'll treat people better than they did in that place." She nodded firmly. "I will." With that, Keanu revved his engine, gave her a quick nod, and rode off into the evening, leaving behind yet another quiet act of kindness, one that, like so many of his deeds, would never make the headlines, but would change someone's life forever. Meanwhile, back at the luxury salon, the chaos had only begun. Word had started to spread about what had happened, and by the time the manager checked their social media, the comments were rolling in. "Did you guys seriously turn away Keanu Reeves? Wow, judging people by their clothes? You just lost a lot of business. This is disgusting. I'm never stepping foot in that place again." The manager slumped in her chair, groaning. "We're ruined," the receptionist, her face pale, whispered, "Maybe we should have just given him the haircut." But it was too late. Their mistake had cost them far more than they ever expected.